Hello and welcome to Uncovered, the podcast with your host, Jason Irving. Join me in a journey to understand what's truly happening in your world and the world around you. This is not about how you're living life on the surface. It's about what's truly driving you from under the covers. I'm going to take you on a journey to deeply uncover the reason why you are here, the ultimate purpose in your problems and the way that they have shaped your life up until now. See, I believe you have a purpose, and your problems are the highway towards ultimate realization of that journey towards freedom and the reconnection of your true self. I've been told I have a different spin on most things, and I'll be giving you my understanding of life, love, and what we're all here for, purpose. To get the best out of this podcast, drop what you already know so you can discover what's beyond you. So join me, let's play this game of life and bring on liberation, transformation, and change. Let's do this. Hey, welcome to Uncovered. I'm really excited. I've got this amazing man, Chris, to come and have a chat with me today. Welcome to Uncovered, mate.
Thanks for having me, Jason.
No worries. We're taking two right now. The recording didn't work the first time. So, Chris, I really would love to know sort of who you are, what you are, and why you are. I met you in Pilates one day, and you got this thing about you that really made, like, I love people who actually have an ability to connect with people, right? And you have that, right? It's something that some people, you just can't teach it. And you have it just naturally in spades, this ability to sort of connect with someone and hold empathy for someone that you don't know. So when I was doing my Pilates, I was like, far out, this is hard work. And you'd come around and I could feel and sense the way that you approached everyone. And what I saw was a really safe man, right? A really safe human who wants to look after others. Usually what I find with people is there's some sort of unsafety inside that they're dealing with on the inside, and they do for others what they can't do for themselves sometimes. So I'd love to know, what's your journey and what have you sort of started? Where did you start sort of the journey of helping people, and where did it come from?
Yeah. Look, that's a really interesting reflection. I guess it's probably something that I take for granted. The comment around, providing something on the outside that you can't provide on the inside is interesting.
Yeah.
I'm still kind of mulling that over. Look, in a practical sense, I do enjoy facilitating fitness, yoga, Pilates, workshops, anything really that sort of connects with people. I think that everyone's got a story, and sometimes if we get a little too caught up in our own life, thoughts, emotions, we're sort of missing the cues that other people give us to tell a story about them to us. So I try and stay as composed as possible. I've got my own sort of practice that I do proactively, deliberately, habitually to stay in that composed place so that I'm a little bit more attuned to what is going on around me.
Yeah, I love that.
But yeah, I mean, that's taken time and effort, and it's probably something that has developed since leaving the military. So I spent 14 years in the army as an engineer, joining as probably a misunderstood and troubled teen from childhood, which I've started talking a bit more openly about recently. But that exit from the military was from a medical discharge with post-traumatic stress and depression. And, in one way it was the straw that broke the camel's back that broke me, and I lost a lot of capacity and cognitive function. But it was always also a start point to rebuild and to come out a better version of myself. And I've had a lot of experiences, people, practices along the way that have supported that. Uh, but it takes time, you know, and patience, perseverance. But yeah, I'm grateful for all the experiences that I've gone through. Um, it's led me to where I am. Yeah, which I just feel like I am who I am. It's not, it's not like I'm setting out to provide anything in particular. I just do what I enjoy these days, and teaching Pilates is something that I enjoy doing. And if I stop enjoying it, then I'll take a break from
Yeah,
it.
and do something else. So, what was the reason for your depression? Like, what happened that made you drop out of the army?
Mm.
Can you
Yeah,
divulge any of the
yeah,
circumstances that
sure.
happened?
Look, I've become aware more recently that I was probably preloaded with trauma, and I was more susceptible to um, having adverse reactions to my experiences in the military.
Hmm.
But for a long time, I was performing really well and had a stellar career that's at the top of the pop, um, until I wasn't. And what happened was the catalyst was deployment to Afghanistan in 2011. It was a pretty hairy period of time. I just sort of discovered recently, looking at it, that in 2011 we lost 25% of all of our Australian killed in action.
Yeah,
Uh,
wow.
and we were in Afghanistan for really, well, from 2020, no, sorry, 2001 right through to uh, 2021. So, yeah, 20 years, and a quarter of our killed in action happened in that 2011 period. It was the rise of green on blue attacks. So for a long time, improvised explosive devices, IEDs, were the biggest killer. And that was my role, was to lead teams that would find and remove or detonate roadside bombs. But while I was there, there was an increase, and the biggest threat moved from being IEDs to uh, green on blue attacks. So Afghan army soldiers who we were mentoring turning their weapons on us and becoming a threat. So
Wow.
we had three soldiers killed in our time there from a green on blue attack, and there'd been one just previous to our arrival, which is the first Australian. Um, so it's just sort of a stressful period. So there's the baseline of allostatic load or stress was high.
Hmm.
Uh, I had an increased sense of responsibility um, to my troops and I guess the role. And I probably took a few things a little bit too personally in that time. There's two events in particular. One was uh, a, a 20 kilo explosive device was found in the bazaar. So we were in the Uruzgan province, uh, about 35 k's away from the capital, Tarankout, up in the valley. And we'd only been there for about a week, and uh, one of the Afghan soldiers came into the the patrol base and tried to hand me a 20-litre yellow palm oil container. We call them YPOCs. And they were what the Taliban were using to fill with explosives and bury in the road to blow up vehicles. Uh, I was concerned because there'd been an increase in the use of Trojan devices, like Trojan's horse. Um, the power pack and initiation or switch would be taken away from the outside, and that would generally mean that the device or the explosive inside was safe, but then there'd be a secondary means of initiation. So another battery pack and another initiation source inside, usually a remote control. So what would happen is we'd take the wires off, cut the power, and then take it inside, and then someone from the outside of the patrol base would detonate it. So that's what I was concerned about immediately. And we talk about 5 cent, 50 cent, so the backside, when you're under pressure.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, we took it outside, blew it up, and I said to the intelligence officer, just anytime you find something like that now, just tell us, and we'll go out together, and I'll get my guys to mentor your soldiers on how to safely remove the device or blow it up. Because it was around about a 50% success rate in pulling these things out of the ground. 50% of the time, the person doing it would die. Um,
Wow.
so our job was to try and mentor them, and yeah, he agreed. And then about like 2 or 3 days later, uh, there was a report, same location in the bazaar, which is like the marketplace. There was another one, and I got the guys in and we started getting ready and looking at where we were going to cordon or secure the area and stop people coming in. Um, and then we're about to leave, and I heard an explosion. It was only a couple of k's away, so it had gone off, and it was um, a dual cab ute that had 7 Afghan National Police inside of it. Went over it, and they were all killed. And one of my roommates in the patrol base had been working very closely with the police. He was an American guy who spoke fluent Dari, the language that they used. And yeah, he was pretty upset, understandably. And I just felt like we probably could have moved a bit faster, got out there and dealt with it, but didn't. And yeah, that was like the pretty much the start of the trip. Then we had incidents where a sniper um, he lost his legs from an IED that went off and couldn't be saved. Uh, we had the 3 guys that were killed by the Afghan soldier. And then towards the end of the trip, so we'd had 5 strikes, we'd call them. So if a vehicle, basically the way we operated is we were in Bushmasters, so an armored vehicle with this V-shaped hull, a really effective Australian-made vehicle for force protection.
Mhm.
But the our searchers, our sappers would identify if there was an area that looked like a likely place that a bomb would be, they'd get out and they'd go and walk the ground and with metal detectors, um, prove the route or clear it so that the whole convoy could get through.
Mm.
So there's this term, follow the sapper, and it's been around for a long time. During the First and Second World Wars, it was around the sappers would go out and clear the minefields and clear the obstacles so that the fighting force could get through. Um, so that's what we were doing in Afghanistan. They get out, walk the route, clear it, and the vehicles would follow. Um, but we were dealing with um, low and no metal content devices that the Taliban were making, so the the mine detectors wouldn't pick it up.
Mhm.
Uh, or sometimes quite often we'd use dogs to search as well. So um, explosive detection dogs, they wouldn't always pick it up. Very dusty in Afghanistan. Their noses clog up, and so they can't smell. Um, so we had 5 occasions where uh, either the, the IED would blow up. We're very lucky that no one was killed in our convoys. There was some injuries, some traumatic brain injury from one of our crew commanders, another guy that got shot out of the back of the Bushmaster. So there's like this, we call it a cupola, where the machine gun's on the side and you can spin it around, but you're standing out a hatch out the top of the vehicle, providing sort of eyes and protection. Um, yeah, when they hit one, he got shot out. Really big guy. Amazing that he, you know, did a somersault, landed on his feet, and then he walked back to the vehicle and provided first aid to the guys inside.
What?
Crazy.
So
Um,
you experienced and saw people passing and bodies.
yeah, yeah. So I'm avoiding getting to the worst of it, but
Okay.
um, I guess just want to provide you and the audience a bit of a context to it all. Um, Most of that stuff I could rationalize. It was, we're in a war. It was a dangerous place.
Yeah.
People were going to die. And I guess in the preparation, uh, with my guys, it wasn't a case of thinking if somebody was going to get killed or injured. It was more a case of when and who. So that's sort of the mindset, and you become quite used to that. Um, One thing I didn't prepare for and couldn't really account for was the loss of civilians, and that was really what affected me the most. Is towards the end of the trip, we had about a month to go, and my focus was really on protecting our people, and that was the primary concern because we'd made it through fairly unscathed. Uh, and there was a report of a device, and there was a whole range of circumstances. We just didn't go. And what ended up happening was a tractor and a trailer ran over that device, and it had villages on it. And about half were killed. And then there were four children and a male and a female adult that got brought into the patrol base. And I went out and provided first aid on them. And, we got them on packaged up and onto a helicopter and evacuated. But I've got no idea whether they survived or not. Uh, and I just felt a sense of responsibility that we didn't do as much as we could have. Um, since then, I've rationalized, I didn't put this thing in the ground. It was the Taliban, and
Mm.
there's a whole range of sort of mental um, gymnastics that I go through over it.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's essentially what led to my discharge was having disturbed sleep, really losing cognitive function, um, becoming quite moody, um, using alcohol a lot more, just a whole range of things that just diminished my capacity. And it was sort of that was the catalyst that led to all of that. And in
Mm.
the end, I probably could have continued in service, could have lied to psychologists and stayed there, but I just felt like it wasn't fair to the people I was leading to not be fully present, fully capable, and sort of even in my mood. So I made the decision to take the medical discharge and leave.
Yeah, wow.
Mm,
So, and I, it's really interesting hearing your conversation, like the rationalization of how you're taught to deal with something that is so abnormal, which is death
mm,
and war and fighting, and then to be here and seeing people, having a hard time with stuff that you've seen some of the worst versions of humanity in action.
mm,
And the tricky thing with mindset is like your emotions are what drive that PTSD, right? And you don't get taught that. You got taught deal with this in a mind way.
mm,
And then a lot of the model doesn't know how to actually help emotions because
mm,
they're dealing with the head, and it's the heart that's hurting,
Yeah.
and no one's really taught, how to handle that. And usually, the standard thing, especially for men, is to go to alcohol
Yeah.
to cope as a coping mechanism because it's a great medicine for numbness.
Mm.
So it would have been so important for you to experience having alcohol because you might not be here now.
Yeah. I mean, it served a purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's um it's funny, talk about dysfunctional behaviors or
Mm.
but I think of that and I look at people that are, might be dysfunctional and I think, well, it's serving a purpose. It has a function
Yeah.
in their life at that particular point in time, you know. And at the end of the day, they're the ones that have to live with themselves. And, unless somebody really wants to make a change on whatever those dysfunctional or functional for them behaviors or activities are, then you can't force it.
No.
So,
But it's a
yeah.
standard thing. Like, if we look at mental health, um, most people are using substance to cope, right?
Mm,
Whether it's using an antidepressant, which I don't say is wrong or right. It's
yeah.
very, very, very important that people need that sort of uh, approach to manage how their head is doing because science still doesn't know how to figure out how to sort this head of ours out, right? There's so much that you can look at. At the end of the day, still haven't figured it out yet.
No, it's just an experiment.
Yeah, it is. So now, uh, what I'm hearing from you, Chris, is that you've experimented with approaches to try to help you manage how you feel, how you think,
Mm.
and what you do. So yoga has probably become your medicine
Mm.
to help you. Would you agree? Or
Yeah, it's been a good modality for self-exploration,
mm,
I would say. I think what it teaches, if a genuine practice of yoga, it's teaching interoceptive awareness, noticing what's happening internally.
yeah,
Because we go through life where the five senses are turned outwards, we're perceiving the world through, Stephen Porges talks about neuroception. And really, we're just on the lookout for threat
yeah,
all the time because you know, for a long time throughout history, we were prey.
mm,
You know, we're we're on that sort of even keel with predators, and then we were predators as well. And it's only really in recent history that we've become apex predators. Um, so there's a there's a part of us that behaves like a field mouse,
yeah,
you know, and our nervous system's on this constant lookout for danger. And when we experience situations where our life or safety or the safety of our offspring is threatened, uh, then that will have significant impact on our structure of our brain, but also our neurochemistry and the way that we approach life in the future. So every experience is having a conditioning effect on our brains.
yeah,
Um, so I guess I've become quite interested in it from the perspective of we go through classical conditioning and operant conditioning in the military and in first responder careers in order to override the fear response,
yes,
to be able to act effectively in those moments where we become overwhelmed.
yeah,
And we lose function in our prefrontal cortex or our rationalizing decision-making part of the brain, and we have to rely on these scripts or apps or programs that have been embedded through conditioning. And in the army, the most A basic one is the initial action. So if you get shot at, it's bang, run down, crawl, observe, aim, fire. Run down, crawl, observe, aim, fire. And you just do that over and over again. And we drill it so consistently in the military that as soon as the shot rings out, that's what you do. And it's not a cognitive process, it's instinct,
Yeah.
which is great if you're at war or if you're training for war. It's not great. And I'm sure most people have heard stories of, a car backfiring and all of a sudden the veteran has hit the ground and he's starting to crawl. So it's like Pavlov's dog.
Yeah.
And
So do you ever have those flashbacks where your mind just goes into a reaction at any point in time? Does that ever happen with you?
I have been triggered to respond with that initial action.
Yeah.
Um, so probably one of the most significant times. So if you're on foot, you run down, crawl, or send aim, fire. If you're in a vehicle, uh, you turn off the track. So if you get shot at while you're driving a vehicle, you you turn off the track and we go into like this herringbone. Or if it's an ambush from the side, you might all turn towards the fire and then, assault the enemy position. I had an acorn hit the top of my ute uh, when I was driving through Canberra one day. It must have been sort of late autumn and the leaves were falling and acorns were coming off. And it hit the roof of the ute and I turned the vehicle just instinctively into like oncoming traffic.
Yeah, wow.
So that was probably the most significant, potentially dangerous. Uh, and all of a sudden, sort of, fortunately, I kicked back into cognition and got back into my lane and kept driving, but then had an elevated heart rate and tension in my body and all of that. And I think that's one that I noticed. But quite often, uh, we go through these triggers that are more subtle than that,
Yeah.
that are causing a response in the body, creates physiological changes like an increase in tension, usually around the shoulders or tightened hip flexors, tension through the abdomen, where it's sort of a protective mechanism. And it can be triggered by any number of senses that are associated to past experiences. The scary thing is because it's under the conscious layer, more often than not, we don't know what's happening.
Mm.
It's just all of a sudden we become more irritable. We're less effective in communicating with other people. We're not able to process information as well as we ought to or think we ought to. And that can be a really uncomfortable and scary place to be,
Mm.
particularly if it's prolonged. And I guess that's what, the diagnosis, which is really just it's a cluster of symptoms that have been put together to say, well, that's post-traumatic stress disorder, or that's anxiety, or that's depression. But really, we're biological creatures responding to our environment, being shaped by past experiences, and that changes the way that we behave and the way that we perceive the world around us and people around us. And sometimes when it's not checked, it can become really, unhelpful in our everyday function.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. I've got a question for you.
Mm.
Does your body go into response if someone's coming in and saying, "Hey, I just want to care for you,"
Yes, sometimes.
right? Does
Yeah.
it go into a place where I'm doing this right now,
Yeah, yeah.
where it's going, I'm not sure whether I'm safe,
Yeah, yeah.
defense
You want to go.
mechanism?
Sometimes I need a bit of space.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Does it
yeah.
do
No,
that?
you're right. And it really depends on the experience, right? So I see that a lot in yoga and doing like trauma aware training.
Mm.
Yoga is still predominantly female.
Yeah.
So the trauma type experiences for most females that come through are related to, childhood abuse or uh, violence in a relationship or being, you know, touched or pursued sexually when it's unwanted. So that type of um, contact can be a lot more uh, triggering
Mhm.
for people that have been through that experience. And it's not isolated to females, but that sort of thing is probably more triggering in that situation. For me personally, in my experience, a lot of it is around facial expression.
Yeah.
So in Afghanistan, the Taliban were blending in with the local population, would wear the same clothes, would hide their weapons either on their person under loose clothing, or they would, you know, have them away when they wanted to move in and around us.
Gotcha.
So we would have this habit of like scanning faces, looking for cues that would indicate threat, which is fine when you're in that environment.
Yeah, yeah.
But when you're back in normal civilization, uh, and I notice it now, I spend time in my job at my office, and someone might just be having a bad day, or they might be unwell, they might have stomach cramps, whatever it is. But then the facial expression
Yeah.
can be misperceived as a threat. And it's under that conscious layer. It's subconscious,
Mm.
noticing that, and the nervous system's picking up on those facial expressions and going, oh shit, I'm in danger here.
Mm.
And then there's physiological changes, increased tension, increased heart rate, basically being less efficient as an information worker
Yeah, yeah.
because of the reaction to that. So,
So do you notice like that you're doing that? Like, do you notice like that, you know, you came in here, you don't know me
mm,
very well at all.
mm.
Did you come in and assess, check me out, do all those things subconsciously? Were you doing that consciously or consciously or subconsciously?
Some these days are sort of I toggle between the two,
Hmm.
and it's less about noticing whether I'm unconsciously doing it. It's more noticing what's happening in my body. So it's coming back to that interoceptive awareness.
Mm.
So in order to detect what's going on subconsciously, I have to consciously observe responses in my body.
So what is your body doing right now for the listeners right now? Where are you now? I'm
Yeah.
just asking you to
Yeah.
check in.
Yeah. I'm probably at a like a 65 to 70% uh tension level.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I can feel that,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so because I'm so sensitive, I can tell with how people put the walls up and all the bits and pieces, what's he going to say? Am I going to be safe?
Yeah.
I feel all of that from you,
Hmm.
right? And I can feel that part that's calculated, premeditated,
Sure.
pre-focused, and very, very prudent in your communication,
Hmm.
right? And I can see the safety that you need,
Hmm.
right? And it would make perfect sense with your just what I know about you
Mm.
from what you've spoken about with the war stuff. But there's some more stuff that you've actually said that's been even harder, like your pre-war stuff from childhood.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you can open up around that that maybe has got maybe a little bit of a guard up too, because you're like at a 6.5 out of
Yeah, sure.
or 7 around safety right now to make sure that you're okay. What's triggered you from maybe trying to make sure that you're a safe human in a world that maybe you'll have experienced as being extremely unsafe?
Yeah. Look, I grew up in a violent household. Um, the violence wasn't directed towards me, but there's yeah, my father was violent towards my mum, and I think it's probably started that I'm aware of from about mm, three 3 years old, something like that. Yeah, I mean, the challenge is that went from about that age to 9. And in a lot of ways, when you're developing at that age, you just sort of think, oh, this is just normal, you
Mm,
know? And I remember having those thoughts to myself about, you know, do other people live the same way as us?
right.
And I just recall thinking, do other people have toast? Do they have cuppas? And and I've sort of written about this a little bit. Yeah, relationships like my parents. And yeah, it was hard. Took a lot of soul searching over the years to sort of figure out who I was and the effect that that had. Um, that inflated sense of responsibility in Afghanistan probably came from mum had left and come back and left and come back a number of times. And when I was 9, sort of I got pulled out of cricket and I was at my grandparents' place and I knew something was going on. We stayed there for a little while. Um, and my dad was a plumber and he came past the house one morning when I was out playing hockey in the front yard. Said, come here and said, tell your mum to come home or else. I was like, "Hmm." I didn't pass on the message, but mum came out sort of a bit later and she's sort of kneeling, saying, I don't know what to do. What should I do? And I just said, oh, you've got to leave. So we left. So it was sort of, you know, from then, as we're packing up and leaving, going to Sydney, we're in the central west of New South Wales. Um, I was angry at her for putting me in that position. Probably started missing dad straight away, despite the way that he was to her and all of that. It was like still my dad. So there was a lot of um, disruption for me in that time and just being annoyed, like angry with them,
Mm,
resentful. Um, would made a lot of effort to to go back and see him over the years as well. And just kind of felt like I was making all the effort. We went through court and probably through the court process, I was taking um, that calculated approach because I didn't want him to get in trouble.
yeah,
So I
okay.
was kind of covering for him in the way that he was and just watched them bloody lose their financial resources and never really come back to full function. Like he just sort of went into himself for a long time. And later on, shared some really good wisdom from what he'd learned about himself and that whole experience. But mum was affected significantly with the trauma of it. And, that impacted her ability to function
Mm,
and parent. So I was cooking a lamb roast this morning and I was talking to a guy that's staying with me about, you know, whether or not his parents were into cooking. And it's something that I missed. I'd see other families, having nice home cooked meals and stuff like that. And it's just not something that mum had the capacity for very often.
mhm.
Uh, so I always felt like I was missing out. I love to cook now because I try and fill that need in myself
Yeah.
and provide that for my kids. Uh, I guess that's a bit of a snapshot of what that experience was like. And
So,
yeah.
so what I'm sort of uncovering here, um, is a person. You tell me if I'm wrong here. That I'm seeing a person who is helping others create safety in their bodies through yoga, Pilates,
Mm.
and that's how I felt you,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
I felt really, really safe with you
Mm.
as a person. I
Mm.
was like, he will look after me.
Mm.
And from your story of being the person to look after the people and feeling like you lost a whole lot of people in the wars, you lost your safety as a young child.
Mm.
That's what I call purpose in your problems.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
unsafety's been your life,
Mm.
and you've created an environment and an ecosystem where you're building safety for others so you can find safety in yourself.
Yeah.
Would
That
you
makes
agree?
sense. Yeah, it does. And I'm really committed. I think one of the messages that I try and give to people when I'm facilitating courses is understand yourself so that you can create that safety in yourself. And I
Mm.
try and facilitate that. But the end state is so that they're emotionally available
Yeah,
for their people,
yeah.
their partners, their children, whoever it is. And I guess in a way, and it kind of makes sense, I'm trying to create the conditions and the awareness for them that I would have liked my parents to have for me.
Mm.
Yeah.
I love that.
Mm.
And so this is a really important aspect, listeners, is that I love sort of opening people up and finding out their story. And so when I look into your eyes, I see pain,
Yeah.
right? And I see a person helping create safety for others with his pain.
Hmm.
And each person that you help, that pain just starts to disperse and alleviates, I'm
Mm.
assuming.
Yeah, it's a process.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and you've had an experience where a lot of people haven't, so there are yoga instructors and there are people who have had people die in front of them and teach yoga,
Mm.
right? So you've had an extreme life, right? And extreme experiences from your childhood
Mm.
and your working life, and you come in to an environment and create Zen when you have not had Zen.
Mm.
And most people would end up staying on the grog, staying in their stuckness and blaming their past for their present and their future.
Mm.
And what made you do something different? What made you say, no, I don't want this? What was it in you that said, no,
Mm.
I want to do something else?
I think there's two things that really stand out to me. And despite the disappointment, the resentment that I had to my parents for a long time, and I've arrived at a place where I've forgiven them because really they're just people that were trying to do the best that they could and with what the
Mm,
tools that they had.
yeah.
Um, but they gave me two gifts. So one was, I remember Mum talking to me about having conversations with a Vietnam veteran down the road, and she'd come back from talking to him and she'd go, "Wow, geez, he has some really graphic conversations, but he seems like he's in a good place." And she said, "I think the key is you just got to talk about it. You just got to, get it off your chest. Don't bottle it up, whatever it is." And this is a
Mm,
long time before I joined the military. So I took that as a lesson from her. And the other one from Dad was after I got home from Afghanistan and I was having all this, emotional distress. I talked to him about it. And he said, "I'm not my body. I'm not my thoughts. I have a body and I have thoughts." And it was an obscure comment to me at the time. I didn't understand what he was saying. And I've had this experience where I've shared that with other people and they're looking at me like I'm weird and they've come back years later and but it was about that separation. Is that we're, born into a body, and similar to that conditioning that we do deliberately in the military or, in careers where we need to have a certain response under pressure, we become conditioned to identify with our bodies. And then that continues to becoming identified with our experiences, identified with our thoughts that arise out of those experiences. And that's what creates this suffering that
Mm.
really prevents us from living a full life. So they're the two takeaways from them that have help me process my own experiences and then create a little bit of separation where I can just observe. Um, and I just, you know, I had a weird conversation with AI the other day that basically I arrived at a point where, um, for me personally these days, I know that I'm only here temporarily, a spiritual being having a human experience. But if you get lost in that, then you don't do anything in life,
Yeah.
you know. And then the other side of me is I'm playing a part throughout this life, a little bit like, an actor in a movie. But sometimes what happens is we forget that we're an actor.
Mm.
We become fully identified with that role. And I think that's the challenge for a lot of people coming out of high stakes careers. Maybe it's the military, you know, uniform careers, could be professional athletes, where you become so identified with your your title, your uniform, your status, that if something happens where you no longer can be that, then you sort of unravel
Yeah.
as a person. So I'm kind of getting off track here, but
No, you're not.
it's
Not at all.
yeah. These days I try not to take it too seriously, but I do, notice, and when I'm talking about certain things, or really sort of tapping into that human experience and my physiology, the way that my brain and body sort of connect, and uh, yeah, that tension can come back in, and
Yeah.
yeah, I'm back down to about a 3.5, 4.
Yeah, yeah. And it's really good to, to be able to talk about these things because a lot of people in your zone just hold it in
Yeah,
and suffocate,
yeah,
right? And to be able to communicate it and get it out, it's probably dropped it down.
mm,
And I think this is really important, listeners, is that you know, I look at this as purpose in your problems. You've had an unsafe experience and you're creating safety for others, right? Through your unsafe experience.
mm,
So you have this demeanor about you, your tone is kind, your smile is very, very particular.
mm,
Like you don't just smile, you stare and smile.
okay,
So when you smiled at me when I was struggling moving my body in Pilates,
yeah,
your smile said it'll be okay.
yeah, okay,
And you drilled right into my eyes and said, it'll be okay, Jay.
yeah,
And it's a probably coming from your military. It's like you want to look after your people
mm,
that you serve. And this is something probably that you were born into as a person. Like you have this something about you
mm,
that gravitates to people wanting to be around you, Chris. And they
mm,
want to know what it is that makes you tick, right? And that's something that I see in people. I look and I go, what is it about this person that makes people feel okay just because they exist?
mm,
And you're one of those people. And it's fascinating to hear your story and to know, where you've come from and where and where you've been. That just objectively what I experienced from you
mm,
and what I know a lot of people who know you in Canberra have experienced from you.
mm,
See, you know how some people's names come up and you go, what a fucking dick, right? Right? Whereas,
I wonder what's going on for them.
yeah. So with you, you get, oh, Chris, he's amazing. He's so awesome. That's
Okay.
all I've heard about you as a human being, right? So that's why I wanted to do the podcast with you. I just, got you on socials and said, can I do a podcast with you? And you said yes. And,
Yeah.
this is why we're here right now.
Yeah.
Because I was intrigued. I wanted to know, why is it that this person has a thing about him?
Mm.
So what I see in you is a person that's here to ease humanity's pain, and a person who's experienced and suffered so much is the perfect acquisition for others
Mm.
to ease their pain. Because I can see why now you can hold other people's so easily, because the amount that you've had and you've witnessed and experienced. And this is what I see, the people who are going through their breakthroughs in life, they have this capacity to hold what other people can't.
Mm.
And that is your gift you bring to the world.
Mm.
And I'm really grateful to have you, talk about your story, and for me to sort of uncover and get to understand, why you tick and how you tick. And listeners, for people in Canberra, and for people around, Chris has this thing about him. So I know that you're going to be around the traps, telling your story. And I know you've probably told your story a few times to other people, around what you do. But, get in touch with this guy, find out what he does, especially if you're a Canberra person. He doesn't just do yoga, he creates safety. And that's what I figured out about you today.
Thanks, Jason.
And is there anything else you would like to say to the listeners today?
It'll be okay. Yeah.
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 And that's the thing that you've got. That's actually, when you say it, I know people will feel that from you.
Mm.
Can you say that again?
It'll be okay. Mm.
Yeah. And that just makes everyone feel calm. So thank you so much for jumping on Uncover today. And I'll give you all the details of how you can find Chris, and who he is, what he does, with all the magical things that he does in the world. So thanks for jumping on with me today.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. Appreciate your time.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to our podcast. We'd love it if you could like and share it with your friends. Our website address is www.wellnessbreakthroughacademy.com. We also have all of the videos on YouTube under Wellness Breakthrough Academy as well. We also do small courses, live events. I have an amazing book called From Broken to Breakthrough. We'd love the opportunity to give you a hand to help you live your purpose, to find out what you're here for, to give you the direction. Our courses are amazing, and we do everything really, really differently with what's happening in the world at the moment. So come and find out how we can help you break your limitations so you can live the life of your dreams. We'll chat soon.